Hi, my name is Darren Joseph from HCJ.tax, and we're the team that seeks to demystify that sometimes confusing world of international tax. And today we have the honor and privilege of having another conversation with Mark. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Mark Morris. I'm based in Zurich. I've been here for nearly 30 years, and I've exclusively devoted myself to automatic exchange of information since the year 2000. And I've been consultant to the EU Commission, the EU Parliament, the OECD regarding automatic exchange, as well as consulting for Tax Justice Network and various other parties. And I would say today, after 25 years, I'm the only person in the entire world that is promoting structures in 4 or 5 different territories that nobody seems to touch. But we'll go through those territories today.
Fantastic. Can you talk to us about British Overseas Territories called St. Helena, which I understand that you've been to personally?
I was there for a few weeks ago. I met most of the government. It's not known as a financial center. In fact, until I was there, not a single non-resident had established a company there. But I say that's ridiculous because it's a fully fledged UK territory. It's probably even more prestigious than the others in terms of wealth management because they've got territorial tax and therefore you get a TIN. But let me speak about the history of St. Helena. It was found by a Portuguese explorer in the 1500s, but the British came along and kicked the Portuguese out, and they colonized it. Well, they didn't colonize it. Funny enough, it was the English East Indian Company, which was the largest company in the world at that time, dealing with spices from Asia, etc. And it was granted a charter by Oliver Cromwell to govern St. Helena. And in fact, they had their own military base on the island. And I stayed in the hotel where the military base used to stay. They established Jamestown, which is the capital, as the island's capital. I think today there's only a few hundred people that live in Jamestown. But remember, the population is 3,000 or 4,000 over the whole island. And then they fortified the island to protect the trade routes. The Dutch briefly came along and seized control of the island, but were swiftly ousted by the British. Again, Britain had the world's biggest empire for a reason. They had a navy all over the world. And then the British turned it into a slave economy. By the late 17th century, half the population were enslaved, Africans, and they grew sugarcane and other flax and so on. In fact, when I was there and I used to ask taxi drivers or shopkeepers, what's your history? And all of them to a T said we're from slaves from 200 years ago. Slavery was abolished in 1826 there. What happened was it was a very important place for stopovers before the Suez Canal was built in the late 1800s. The Suez reduced St. Helena's importance as a shipping stopover, leading to economic decline. In World War II, it served as a key anti-submarine base for Allied forces. And the other British overseas territory, 1,000 kilometers to the north, Ascension Island, became a very important military base, air base. You can imagine trying to sink the U-boats and so on. And St. Helena became a critical Cold War communications hub. But in 1967, limited rule was introduced. And then in 2009, this is interesting, a new constitution granted equal status to St. Helena, Ascension, and Tristan da Cunha, which is another UK territory. But these three became known as one UK territory, and that is called St. Helena, Ascension, and Tristan da Cunha. So a lot of the administration is done from St. Helena. For instance, the company registrar or the tax commissioner is based in St. Helena. But you can't fly to Tristan da Cunha. You can only catch a boat that takes 5 days. But even then, I mean, St. Helena is known as the most remote inhabited place in the world. It is 2,000 miles from Southwest Africa or Angola. They built an airport in 2009 or later, 2017. It took them 7 years to open it. And there were supposed to be UK flights, but it proved to be too dangerous. It's windy, and imagine a long flight coming from the UK, must turn around and go back to Ascension. So the only flights is with one airline from South Africa, and that's once a week, or even once every 8 days if the flight goes on to Ascension Island and comes back. So I had to stay there 8 days. That's the minimum you can stay there. And if it's windy, you can end up staying there for much longer than 8 days. I mean, there's a famous YouTube, I got stranded in the world's most remote airport. And it was this guy that, because the wind was blowing, it's either the wind blowing, because they built the airport on top of a mountain, or it's too cloudy. And you can only land if you can see the runway. They don't have equipment to land through clouds. So it's kind of dangerous to go there if you're on a tight time schedule. Okay,
fantastic. Mark, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do so?
As I travel a lot, the best way to get hold of me is via my website, co-ownershiptrust.com. And then you can email me or try get hold of me by phone, but that depends on the country that I'm in. If they've got cell phone coverage, I go to some really remote places in the world, Falkland Islands, St. Helena, etc. So the best is via my website.